All right, welcome everyone to another edition of the CWA's Community Calls. Today we're going to be talking about the Gyms Act, which is a new law that's up in the House of Representatives and soon to be the Senate to hopefully provide some financial relief to you guys and everyone who works in the health and fitness industry. Um, we'll give you an overview of the Gyms Act today and also talk about a new group that was started recently, the NHFA, which the CWA has been looking at supporting as well, or working to support as well for this particular legislation, and then also some other exciting things that they're planning on working on post-pandemic that'll hopefully help all of the indoor gyms, fitness and climbing in the country. We're also going to give you an update of our Inside Voices campaign and let you know how that's been going and how you can use that Inside Voices campaign to impact this Gyms Act legislation that's up in the House at the moment. And joining us today is Jake Landry, who's a public policy assistant with IHRSA. If you're not familiar with IHRSA, they're an international association that serves all sorts of businesses in the health and fitness sectors. And they work singularly to help draft and introduce the Gyms Act into the House. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Jake, and I'll let you dive in and introduce people to the Gyms Act and the NHFA.
Great, thanks so much, Garnet. So hi, everybody. My name is Jake Landry. I'm the public policy assistant from IHRSA. And before we kind of get into the background of the Gyms Act, I just wanted to take a second to talk about the National Health and Fitness Alliance, which is kind of our new arm of IHRSA that we've created to really kind of bring together the broad community of health and fitness industry behind kind of united advocacy goals. Because one thing we found, especially back in October 2020, when we were working on kind of the first edition of the Gyms Act, which was back in the 116th Congress, that we didn't get a lot of traction. It didn't go very well because the kind of community of health and fitness industry and organizations was not really united. It was really a lot of disparate groups when it's like health clubs, gyms, studios, boutiques, manufacturers, really this kind of broad coalition that no one was really organizing it. So we launched the NHFA to really unite the industry and kind of bring the full force of the industry together behind common cause, which is kind of helping the industry and grow and just be better moving forward. So again, as you can see here, the NHFA is open to anyone with a vested interest in the health and fitness industry community, and where it's an inclusive platform. We're really looking at anybody that has kind of any vested interest in health and fitness industry. We're looking to kind of get on board and just kind of be able to channel all of our efforts into the right places, because 1,000 voices speaking together is a lot better than all these voices kind of speaking out of turn. And as the kind of the bottom point says, and which will segue me into my next point, the current focus and priority of the Gyms Act, or the NHFA right now, is to pass the Gyms Act. So we can go to the next slide there. So what is the Gyms Act, HR 890? The Gyms Act is a $30 billion fund to provide grants to affected businesses in the health and fitness industry, which were shuttered due to the government shutdowns enforced due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So who is eligible? Eligible entities will include really any fitness facilities that provide instruction in a program of physical exercise or offer space for the maintenance and development of physical fitness. We really, with the Gyms Act, tried to make it as broad as possible. As you can kind of see in the second part of that slide, there's some entities that aren't included, which are facilities for golf, hunting, sailing, or riding, kind of like the country club-esque, facilities which are government associated, and then facilities which the health and fitness components are kind of incidental to they're not the main draw of the facility. So really the idea is to get everybody involved and just kind of get into the kind of nitty gritty of how the Gyms Act would work. It is based on facilities 2019 revenue, and it would be up to 45% of the facilities 2019 revenue, and just in a grant before the shutdown. So it's kind of basically based on what money your business was making before the shutdown, and you apply for the grant administered through the SBA, and we just kind of be able to give money to help out these businesses that were shut down for so long. Just to get back into a little history of the Gyms Act, we had the initial version of the Gyms Act, which was called the Health and Fitness Recovery Act, was proposed back in October of 2020 in the 116th Congress. This was also a $30 billion program. but the timing of that was really kind of poor because it was election season. And as I alluded to earlier, we didn't really have the kind of industry united behind it. So we only got about 20 co-sponsors on that, and it was a bit of a struggle. So kind of coming into the 117th Congress, we at IHRSA really worked with our congressional sponsors, because we have the same sponsors on this bill, and other industry groups such as the Community Gyms Coalition, to revise our proposal to ensure the broad industry support. And we kind of tailored the bill to be in line with other packages that were passed for Congress for specific industry relief, like the restaurants carve out and the live venues Save Our Stages Act. So, and Garner, we can go over to the next slide. Thank you. And so what, if we do get this bill passed, what would it cover? Some eligible expenses that the grant would cover include payroll, rent or mortgage payments, including interest, utilities, interest on debt, taxes, and then costs required under any state, local, or federal law or guidelines related to social distancing. So really, we wanted to make it as broad as possible to kind of help people in many ways as we possibly can. Move on to the next slide. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but the initial grants are capped at 45% of the facility's 2019 revenue, or 20 million, whichever is less. And there's also supplemental grants for businesses which would be considered severely impacted. So revenue is only 33% or less of what their most recent quarter compared to 2019 would be. So they would get an additional 25% on top. And again, this is just really designed to be kind of as helpful as we possibly can get it for health and fitness businesses. You can go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, I thought I had one more, but never mind. You can go back to that last one. Anyway, so kind of the current scope of where we're at now, and I'm going to share my screen to show the Gyms Act dashboard, which is it's a website that we created over at the NHFA and IHRSA to help people kind of track how the progress of the Gyms Act is going. So as you can see right now, we have 91 co-sponsors, which is really, really good, especially since we only got this bill filed in February. So we've been moving at a pretty consistent clip, and the goal is to get as many co-sponsors as possible to kind of get this bill on members of Congress's radar as something that really needs to be passed. And a lot of members of Congress really support it and really would like to see it come up for a vote. So both the live events bill and restaurants bill, which I referenced earlier, they did the work of recruiting co-sponsors to their release proposals, and they each recruited over 150 House co-sponsors. In conversations with congressional staff about the Gyms Act, a lot of congressional staffers have told us that kind of neither of the restaurant or the live events proposals really looked like they were going to go through until they were able to get their co-sponsor number up high enough. And then all of a sudden, it got on leadership's radar and became really a big deal for us. So we're really focused on getting those co-sponsors out now. We've been doing this through a one-click campaign, similar to the Inside Voices campaign that you guys are all doing at the CWA. And we've also been setting up meetings with kind of members of Congress and IHRSA members to get some just members of Congress signed on. So currently, as I said, we have 91 co-sponsors in the House. We are trying to build that number up as high as we possibly can. We're also in discussions with the Small Business Committee because that would be the committee that the bill would be passed through. Leadership is aware of the bill, and our eventual goal is to get this Gyms Act kind of included in any other larger moving vehicle in Congress, because nowadays in Congress, very few things kind of pass as bills on their own. Specifically, I kind of want to reference our two initial sponsors were Mike Quigley from Illinois and Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania. And Representative Quigley has really been kind of a dogged advocate for the industry and really is invested in speaking to leadership and speaking with our members of Congress and getting them signed on for this bill. On the Senate side, we are waiting for a kind of a Senate bill to be filed. We have two members of Congress that have kind of preliminarily agreed to be the initial co-sponsors, a Democrat and a Republican. We're not kind of releasing that yet because it's not official, but that should be official in the next week or two, which will be great because we can start driving up co-sponsors on the Senate side as well. We're additionally speaking with the Biden administration. We've had a couple meetings with people in the Biden administration, and the conversation has been really positive, and they're also aware of the industry just really being so hurt by the COVID pandemic and needing some kind of relief. So as kind of referenced earlier, where we go from here, We're on the radar of congressional leadership and the White House, and we're actively pushing for the inclusion of the Gyms Act in all current legislative discussions. In terms of our projects for inclusions, it really depends on that number of co-sponsors. Just kind of the way Congress works is if a lot of members of the House of Representatives or members of the Senate really have put their name on a bill and think they want it to be passed, it gets passed. So we're just trying to drive up that number kind of as high as we possibly can. The decision makers really know about the industry and they know about the Gyms Act. We just have to make sure that we keep the pressure up on them so that they kind of have to do something for us. And just kind of the final point, I referenced a little earlier that this is the NHFA Gyms Act dashboard. If any of you all really want to kind of continue to follow the progress of the Gyms Act, this can be found at IHRSA.org/dashboard. And there's all kinds of links to the language of the Gyms Act, some summaries, links to tools that could be representatives, list of co-sponsors, and just kind of like a list of IHRSA actions we've done. So it's just a helpful way to just track the progress of the legislation and how it's going. With that, I will stop sharing my screen and turn it back over to you, Garner. You're muted there, Garner.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. And I've seen a couple questions are coming into the chat. We'll have a question and answer period at the end of the call. So if any of you guys have questions about details for the Gyms Act at all, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Or once we get to the question and answer period, you can feel free to raise your hand and ask your questions out loud as well. And we'll make sure that all the questions in the chat that are already there get wrapped up at the end of the call. So I'm going to hand this over to our other Jake on the call, which is our Jake at the CWA, and he's going to give you guys an idea of how this how our Inside Voices campaign has been going.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. We are into our Inside Voices campaign. Lots of you have been participating. Obviously, if you're aware, this is a consumer-facing campaign hoping to get folks excited about climbing, coming back to the gym. We're in a really interesting time right now with how things are going with the pandemic. So we really tried to massage our messaging to make it so that folks felt comfortable interacting with you all. And really the whole point is to make it so that folks understand how safe it is to be climbing your facilities and highlighting the amazing things that you're all doing to create that type of community. So these are a little bit of an overview of our stats that we have seen at the CWA and what we have monitored from the gym community and from the manufacturers that have been participating. From the CWA's social media engagement, we have seen 7,000 engagements with all of our posts, and that's just the CWA, calculated at about 10,000 person reach, and that makes 52,000 impressions. And that's not including whenever we post more than once. So if you multiply that and you look at what the campaign has done, there have been more than 175 as of this morning. I calculated about 190 posts, original posts from the campaign from all of you and from consumers. That's more than 61 original posts, original individuals who gyms and manufacturers, et cetera, who have posted using the campaign materials that we've created. We have found about between 15 and 20. Some have decided to take down their posts because that's how social media goes, but we found about 15 different climbers who've shared really inspiring stories, tagged their gyms, and engaged in conversations with all of you on social media. And we calculated that to be about at a 200,000 potential reach. So if you look at the 10,000 that the CWA had, and you look at 200,000 for reach, you can get an idea of what our impression number would be. And that's, again, just for one post. So for instance, we have gyms that have used the materials that we've created more than once, obviously, right? Like this is weeks-long campaign, as you're aware. So as folks have posted more than once, that gives them the potential to make another impression. In social media, the difference, just for your own understanding, the reach is an individual and reaching that individual for the first time versus an impression, which is the capability of that same individual interacting more than once with the content. So it just gives you the idea of the type of impact and visibility that the campaign has had. Because all of you have decided to take along with it. The overlying messaging that we had in the beginning was hoping that the more that all of you use the content that we created, and make it your own, obviously, but use the content that we created, the more successful that it'll be. So we can go to that next slide. And I am going to give you guys a quick tour of the Inside Voices website that we created. As you're aware, we created this website specifically to allow all of you to feel comfortable and engage with your members, getting them comfortable to coming back to your gym and giving them the insight of all the awesome things that you all are doing. So I'm just going to share my screen really quickly here. You all should be able to see the Inside Voices screen here. Give me a nod. I can see some of you. Okay, awesome. So we're going to go through this somewhat quickly, but just as an idea, the whole idea, you might have seen this video. We had a lot of you guys put this on your social media channels, and we linked out to a facts page about indoor climbing and a tips page. Both of these, again, were created specifically in mind for consumers. And the reason for that is we want them to feel comfortable coming back to your location. So we've done roundups of the information that y'all have provided, that we have seen in the community for keeping folks safe during COVID. As folks open their gyms to more and more capacity or open their gyms again for the first time in a while, they're sometimes facing a little bit of an uphill battle with trying to get folks comfortable. And again, the whole point is that we want to make people understand just how responsible this industry is and how much we're all doing to keep our communities safe. And again, the idea is it's supposed to be fun. We've got this parallax scroll layout with a grid box layout here to show some of the posts, some of our favorite stories and other posts that folks have taken our content. As you can see, some of the design stuff, just photos that the gyms have decided to post along with our messaging, making it their own, because every community is different. This is our top line message to get consumers to share their story. The idea behind that, of course, is as more people share their stories, they encourage their community to feel safe going back to the gym. And finally, we also obviously have been working on the Gyms Act and close partnership with all of our other partners, folks like Jake. We have made a click campaign here with messaging that links out to the actual bill itself. And all you need to do is input your address, and then you can send off an email to your representative with a counter here of the other individuals that have done it as well. The whole point of this was to make it easy for folks to be able to do this. We want to eliminate as many barriers to entry as possible with that. We have also created messaging specifically going to co-sponsors and to folks who still need to sign on. So if an individual representative has already signed on, we have made it so that we send them a thank you message. And if they have not signed on yet, then we have messaging that encourages them to do so with a prompt to consumers to make this unique to their own message and their own personal connection to rock climbing, indoor rock climbing. So we wanted to make this as easy for folks to navigate as possible. As well, we backed up everything that we had with our industry data back page here on the website. Just a really quick scroll through this to give you guys some idea. Anything that we put on social media obviously is factual, and we have the data to back it up. And the whole point behind that is here. We wanted folks to be comfortable with knowing that we did all of that factually. So we've got anything that we had on social media, we have data to back it up, and explanations for how we gathered that data. So that was the general tour of our website. Hopefully you all have engaged with it already, but the whole point is that we wanted you to feel comfortable with your community, and getting folks comfortable going back to the gym is all about presenting the information and all of the amazing things that you all are doing already. So with that, we also created resources for the Gyms Act, specifically to get engagement. And as Jake shared, it's moving quite along. We already have that many co-sponsors in the House, hopefully kicking it over to the Senate soon, which is very exciting. So for that reason, we wanted to kind of nudge it along a little bit. Garnett's going to share in just a moment or two, like some of the engagement we've got on other campaigns that we've had. But we did create some resources for you all. We emailed that out to you at the beginning of this call, attached to the email and the confirmation email, but as well, we have it on our website. So I just wanted to direct you to that very, very quickly. It's on if you go to the homepage of our website and you go to the coronavirus section for all of our coronavirus resources. We have a Gyms Act toolkit. It's really front and center, hard to miss. This is a single click download. So it begins downloading the moment that you click it. It will open as a download, obviously. Once it does, we have a very simple folder structure for you. You just go into the folder. We have a PDF that has instructions, a JPEG image to be shared on Facebook and Instagram, as well as an email header for an email if you all use email marketing for your marketing needs. In addition to that, we have resources and language specifically around it that goes straight to the website that you all saw already, with a direct link to our Gyms Act page that has the single click download. So, and there it is. So that was a really quick share, but as you can see, you've got all the language that you would need for 3 different posts if you wanted. You can make it your own, as well as email language with a subject line, header, and the body text that's really simple to follow. So that was a little bit of a whirlwind, but we wanted to make sure that you all had those resources. They have been already emailed out to you, but if for whatever reason you had trouble opening them or whatever it might be, we have them on our website as well. So a little bit of a blitzkrieg there. I think that Garnet needs to pull up the slides really quickly because we also had one more brief announcement regarding, oh yeah, and we also wanted to quickly share some climber stories with you all. As you can see, climber stories are the whole point of what we were hoping to do with this campaign. You can click through these if you search the Inside Voices hashtag and you look at the curated posts on the Inside Voices page. But as we breeze through these, Garnet, you'll see that a lot of the language in all of these unites around the fact that climbing has made a huge impact on these folks. We can go to the next one. You know, like these are sometimes staff. This was a staff member that wanted to create something unique, which I thought was really inspiring, always tagging their gym. And you can go to the next one as well. I am particularly really inspired by this one because it included a video from the climber themselves from their first visit to the gym with an outstanding comment. Rock climbing literally changed everything about me for the better, which just speaks to why we all do this and why we all stick with this industry. So yeah, as you can see, we've made an impact, and hopefully we will continue to do so, which gets into our final piece of our Inside Voices update for you all. We can just skip past that since I already did our toolkit. We are going to be delaying the release of our finale video. We've already seen such awesome stories come out. We know that we can gather even more. So we wanted to create a really great resource and also just kind of focus on the fact that the website itself is meant to be more of an ongoing resource. It doesn't have to necessarily end when we hit the end button on, you know, week 12, whatever it might be. We wanted this to continue. So with that in mind, we also had the opportunity to potentially work into the video something about the Olympics coming up in July. So that's really exciting. So this video is going to be really, really good. We're really excited to be potentially including some stuff around the Olympics, which will gather even more insight. So we are going to delay the release of this video, and we will follow up with you all about when that will be. But we're currently looking at the end of April, beginning of May, mid-May. So we'll obviously be in communication with you all regarding the campaign itself. But that finale video will not be following the guidance that we created in the beginning of the campaign, specifically around when it was going to be released. So that's not actually going to be coming out in 2 weeks. We're going to be pushing it just a little bit longer just to get something really awesome. So again, a little bit of a blitzkrieg, but I appreciate everyone staying with me there. And at that point, I'm actually going to be handing it back to Garnet, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the end regarding Inside Voices and any problems or concerns or awesome stuff that you have to share about it.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. And I was just going to highlight again that website is there for you guys to use. All of these images and all the language that we've created in this toolkit is there for you to use. The structured part of this campaign is coming to a close now, but as we're all on different reopening cycles and schedules, and we have our own marketing plans to work around, you can continue to use all of this information and all of these resources at your own leisure throughout the, well, forever, if you want to. Hopefully the stuff that's specific to the pandemic starts to become less and less relevant in the future. But that data page that Jake showed you on the consumer-facing site, feel free to share those images if you like, or use those as you will. And likewise with the GYMS Act, you can use the resources we provided in the images or just create your own and share this. Early on in the pandemic, we had a less structured campaign around a petition that we did prior to any of the stimulus coming out to help support those efforts in Congress. And we ended up having a massive engagement from our industry. Almost 24,000 people participated in that petition and that letter writing campaign. And this one's even easier now that we've launched this consumer-facing site with a one-click campaign. So you guys can really have a direct impact on this legislation by sharing this with your members and encouraging people to go and write those letters to their representatives. As Jake mentioned earlier, having that pressure from the general public is really what's going to move the needle on this legislation, whether that becomes a standalone bill or whether it gets included in the upcoming omnibus opportunity we have in front of us. And those can happen really fast, and getting letters in and getting that number of those sponsors quickly is really vital. So whether you download our GYMS Act kit and use all of the resources that we've created for you to make it easy, or whether you just take that URL that we have inside voices.cwapro.org #GYMSAct and just blast that out to everybody you know, it's really going to help drive those numbers up and get this legislation passed as quickly as we can. So I'm going to open this up to some questions, and we had a couple that were already in the chat. So if you already haven't thrown your question into the chat, feel free to do so now. Or if there's a little bit of a lull, you can also unmute yourself and just shout your question out. So the first question I had was for you, Jake, from IHRSA. And that was around businesses that opened in 2020. We had a large number of climbing gyms open in 2020 and even more slated for 2021, which is fantastic. Is there any carve out in the GYMS Act to help folks who didn't have 2019 revenue?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So what I would say is the answer to that question is currently there isn't anything stopping those people from getting GYMS Act money. We had to kind of come up with a way to determine how much money each gym got, and the easiest way to do it that included the most people was based on 2019 revenue. So there's nothing written in the law that if it was passed would say, oh, those people can't get money. It would be kind of up to the SBA, the Small Business Administration, who's going to be dispersing the money to kind of calculate how much grant money those gyms would get. It's not going to be as simple, obviously, because they don't have 2019 revenue, but they're definitely not excluded from the GYMS Act at all.
So thanks for that. And then just as a confirmation, the revenue numbers for that 45% range, and then also the revenue numbers for the additional 25% grant for heavily impacted businesses, that's based on gross revenue and not net revenue, is that correct?
It is gross revenue. You were all over that in the chat when you answered it. That is correct.
Great. All right. Just give a minute here for any questions. And again, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask it or throw it in the chat. Any other questions around the GYMS Act?
I think I saw someone raise their hand as the function, but it doesn't look like it's happening anymore. So that will.
Oh, we got you, Rich. Go for it.
Yeah, there it is, Rich. Sorry, I didn't see you there.
And you're muted. Oh, hey, Rich, you're on mute. So if you just click on that button in the lower left.
Sorry about that. There's all these different ways of getting money into the system now through the government with the PPP, the tax credits, the idle loans and all that. And everybody's going after that money. Is that going to be considered or looked at during this grant application? How much money you are getting from these other sources?
It will not be considered or looked at if you'll be available for the grant. Basically, the only thing that you couldn't do is if you, let's say, wrote off, if you said you paid for October 2020 payroll expenses through PPP, you can't then also say you're going to pay for October 20 payroll expenses through Gym's Act money. So it's just, you can't double dip and use the money for the same exact thing, but it doesn't have any relation to whether you get money or not.
Because a lot of that money is being used for all, you know, the EIDL loan and the PPP is used for all different things. So how do they track that? I mean, how's a gym supposed to say, well, I'm going to carve out for these expenses, and you know, my EIDL loan or the PPP money is carved out for these other expenses? And what's the tracking system that's going to be? How are we going to have to present that to the government?
So it's going to be through the SBA again, and probably related again through, similar to the application process for PPP, and it's going to probably ask what money you received already, but it doesn't disclude you from receiving more money. It's just making sure that you're not double dipping. I'm not exactly sure, honestly, what the form will look like itself, but there shouldn't be any exclusions for already receiving money.
Yeah, and I think as we've seen with the way that most of these stimulus packages are rolled out, legislation tends to be developed much more quickly than the implementation from the SBA. And you might even see, like, if this were to be passed or included in another bill, you'd probably see a lag of you know, a number of weeks until the SBA actually formalized that paperwork. But I think you could take a look at, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jake, but I think you could take a look at the Shuttered Venue Grant and get a really good idea of what this might look like should it pass on the reporting side.
Yeah, that's a great point. We really modeled our piece of legislation after the Shuttered Venues Coalition's bill, and that's passed, and they've been paying out money right now. So that's a great point, that looking at how that was implemented would really be kind of a indicator in how the SBA would implement ours.
I saw another question in the chat here around any other outdoor climbing groups that might be supporting CWA's efforts. And yeah, so we definitely reach out to most of the North American, since that's the most relevant set of sister organizations to ours in the nonprofit world. So yeah, hopefully the AAC and Access Funds of the world, and certainly I think we'll see some support from USA Climbing on these efforts as well, to help provide resources and get pens on paper to write these letters. And you know, I will just do a shout out to the Access Fund as well. Just as a thank you, kind of on the back end, they've provided a lot of support on some of these policy discussions as well, and that's been a great help to us at the CWA. So there's also some support on the behind the scenes that sometimes it doesn't get broadcast as much, but a great place to put a big thank you into the Access Fund there for that support and help that they've given us over the last number of months throughout the pandemic.
Seeing Doug Cosby has his hand raised there. Doug, if you want to take yourself off mute.
Hey,
Love the background.
do you hear me now?
Yeah.
We got you, Doug.
Yeah, as long as that climber doesn't fall, I'm fine. The qualified expenses for this, are they after funding or leading up to the point of funding? So, for example, PPP funds are all spent after they're funded. Do we know know that yet? Do we know how it's being proposed?
I'm not exactly sure. What do you mean before or after funding? Could you elaborate on that a little more?
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's say that we apply for our 40% or whatever it was, and we can't double dip. So any payroll that was paid by PPP, any other expenses paid by that, or any other grant money, presumably, that we've received that paid other expenses, we cannot apply those to this program. So are we collecting data, expenses prior to the grant program that were not paid for by other money and using those to get a number to apply for? Or are we able to apply for the full amount And then from that point forward, like with PPP, then spend it for qualified expenses.
I believe you're able to apply for the full amount, and then we'll spend it for qualified expenses.
Yeah.
So it'll be in the future expenses.
Yep.
Expense that we will not have.
It can be. It's not limited to only past expenses.
Okay, but to Rich's point, I've already spent my PPP money. I've already spent my grant money. All that is gone and paid for and accounted for. So if we're talking about expenses that are incurred from this point forward, well, I can go the full, I can go the full 40%.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Yeah, I have a question here that about the 2019 revenue, and the 2019 revenue is the basis for that 45%. So that just would I'm going to hazard to guess, no offense to anybody, but everyone in our industry is going to be below that 20 million cap, and you'd be looking at 45% of your 2019 revenue as the cap of grant funds that would be available to you. So that's where 2019 comes in. All right, we'll give a few more minutes here for any other questions that that could come up. And all right, cool. We got a bit of a question, an aside question around resources that are available for effective rental gear cleaning. And I'd refer you to both our coronavirus resource page. We do cover that there a little bit, and then also in our reopening guidance. So those resources, the coronavirus resource hub and our reopening guidance, are still live and available to you. And similar to the Inside Voices consumer-facing site, those will be available indefinitely. And hopefully they become less and less relevant very soon, but we're all on different schedules. There's still gyms that are closed up in Canada to this day, and still a few really heavily impacted gyms out on the West Coast currently. So we're all still on this, hyper local phased approach, and there isn't really an industry-wide consensus there. So anytime you need resources for those specific questions, you can go to the CWA's website, and you can also contact us directly, which is a fantastic segue into leading us out of this, since I'm not seeing any other questions or hands raised. And you can always just reach out directly to anyone here at the CWA for any help. If we don't already know the answer from helping another gym, then we'll find a way to get you the answer you need and connect you to the right people. And we're always there for you guys as a resource. So I really appreciate you joining us on the call. And a big thank you to Jake from IHRSA for his time, and a big thank you to IHRSA for leading this legislation. And I can't wait to work with you guys in the future on whatever comes next. That's more fun than dealing with pandemic stuff.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for just kind of giving me some of your time to talk about the Gyms Act. And again, as the more people we can get behind moving this act forward, the more likely it is to pass. So appreciate any opportunity to talk to some new people about it. So thanks for that.
All right. Have a wonderful time, everyone, and we'll see you on the next community call. Bye.
Thank you all.